This is a complete work of fiction. Content described has no relation whatsoever to any real persons, organizations, nations, or events.
Number fatty liver's dark sake. Number 1. Deep in a back alley, where the glow of a vending machine floated unnervingly white in the dark, Takashi found the man. It was the old man. He had the same face as when he'd sold his kidney years ago. Back then, he wore decent clothes, but now, in the dead of winter, he was in a single shirt, crawling on the ground to scavenge for coins under the vending machine. His hair was greasy and matted, as if he hadn't bathed in weeks, and his 3-day-old stubble had grown out white. He didn't look 60. He looked nearly 70. No, even older. "Hey, old man. Long time no see." When Takashi called out, the old man's eyes flashed with a momentary glint, the sharp, guarded look of a stray dog. But when he saw it was Takashi, the tension left him like air escaping a punctured balloon. "Takashi. It's been a while. 5 years. Yet. That kidney sold for a good price back then, didn't it?" "It did. But it's all gone. Spent it on booze, and a bit on women." The old man sat down on a cardboard box next to the vending machine. It was an empty liquor crate. He sat with an accustomed ease, as if this was his designated spot in the world. "You broke now? Don't be stupid." "Of course I am. The pension ain't enough for the booze. I worked until evening today, but the day labor cash is already gone. If I had another 1,000 yen, I could buy a whole gallon bottle." The old man fumbled in his breast pocket with trembling hands, but there was nothing there. Not even a cigarette. Watching him, Takashi felt a switch flip in his head. This might be an opportunity. Lately, police crackdowns had been tight, and the old drug routes were dead. The organ brokers were still scraping by, but healthy kidneys were hard to find. Everyone looked things up on their smartphones now. They'd realized it was better to work some gig job than to sell a part of themselves in the shadows. But someone like this old man, who had hit rock bottom, was different. He had no choices. He'd do anything. "Old man, you know you can sell your liver." "My liver?" The old man grimaced. His face was flushed beet red from years of drinking. "Stupid. Who'd buy my liver? I drink every day, it's pure fat. The doc told me at my last checkup, you'll be dead in 5 years at this rate." "That's exactly why." Takashi crouched down and looked the old man straight in the eye. It was a technique he'd mastered back in his dealer days. Lock eyes, build trust, and pull them into your pace. It's valuable because it's fatty. There's a thing called a partial living donor transplant. They can cut out the right lobe, and you can keep living on the left. If you sell just the right lobe, it'll fetch a hell of a price. For real. A faint light returned to the old man's eyes. Seeing that, Takashi was certain. This would work. Number 2. However, the world isn't that kind. As soon as Takashi contacted his usual underground doctor and showed him the test data, he was flatly rejected. "No way. This is garbage. The fatty liver is too severe. AST and ALT are 10 times the limit. If you transplant this, the recipient will either reject it or just drop dead. Nobody's paying for this. Not even a partial resection. Don't be an idiot. For a resection to work, the remaining part has to function. This old guy's left lobe is already more than half replaced by fat. If you cut him, he dies. If you have any broker's conscience at all, don't operate on this guy." Takashi wondered if an underground doctor even had a conscience, but he certainly wasn't interested in a deal that wouldn't turn a profit. He tried other routes. He searched dark web forums for Liver Trade Japan and contacted every shady operator he could find. The answers were all the same. Fatty liver, unacceptable. Does not meet transplant criteria. Grade 3 fatty liver? You've got to be joking. 3 days later, Takashi returned to the old man, feeling almost like he should prostrate himself in apology. He didn't actually do it, of course. Old man, sorry. Nobody's buying the liver. They say it's too fatty to use for a transplant. In that moment, all expression vanished from the old man's face. Then, in the next second, he hurled the empty sake bottle in his hand at Takashi. The bottle smashed against the wall, showering the ground with glass shards. I told you. My liver is crap. Nobody wants it. That's it, it's over. The old man slumped onto the cardboard box, his shoulders shaking. Takashi couldn't tell if he was crying or laughing. He just whispered in a voice that seemed ready to fade away, "Sake. I just want a drink." Watching that hunched back, Takashi flipped the switch in his head again. A different route. A different use. If it wasn't for a transplant, maybe. Wait a sec, old man. Takashi pulled out his smartphone and opened a different dark web forum. This wasn't a place for doctors or brokers, it was a place where far more eccentric people gathered. He typed in the search terms, rare ingredients, exotic meat, human foie gras. A few minutes later, a smirk spread across Takashi's face. Old man, I found a way. Number 3. Yumi ran a French restaurant on the 5th floor of a building in a backstreet of Roppongi. On the surface, it was an exclusive members-only establishment. But the real profit came from a completely private counter hidden deep behind a second door. It's been a while, Takashi. Yumi was as beautiful as ever. She was nearing 40, but thanks to the money she'd poured into cosmetic surgery, she looked 30. Her figure was clear even through her apron, just as captivating as when Takashi was infatuated with her years ago. Long time. You look well. Well or not, I'm busy every day chasing down ingredients. Sourcing has been difficult lately. That's what I'm here for. About that sourcing. Takashi pulled a folder from his bag. It was the old man's latest lab results. Yumi took them, put on her glasses, and examined them intently. The glasses suited her. She never wore them back in the day. This, a human liver. Yet. Fatty liver. They told me it was useless for transplants. Yumi's eyes sharpened. It was the gaze of a professional. Grade 3. And because it's alcoholic, the fat is distributed evenly. If we age this, it could be very interesting. Like foie gras. Exactly. Goose foie gras is made by force feeding to enlarge the liver, right? A human alcoholic who drinks every day is essentially doing the same thing. How long has this old man been drinking? 50 years, I'd guess. He told me he started at 15. Yumi looked at the papers with genuine admiration. 50 years, a true craftsman. You don't see an even distribution like this very often. And since it's from a living donor, the freshness is unparalleled. I'll take it. How much? Takashi pumped his fist in his mind. Just the right lobe? They say he can live if the left is left behind. Yet. The right lobe is plenty. Depending on the size, I can serve this for 50,000 yen a slice to my clientele. We can get 20 slices out of one liver. That's 1,000,000 yen in profit. I'll give half to the old man. My fee is 300,000. Does 200,000 for you sound fair, Yumi? Deal. But I'll be the one cooking it, so you make sure the old man is managed properly. Let me know when the surgery date is set. I'll have the kitchen ready. And just like that, the deal was struck. Number 4. When Takashi told the old man, his first reaction was pure rage. Don't screw with me. Eating my liver? Cannibalism. I won't allow it, never. Old man, calm down. It's not about eating you. It's a pastime for the rich. To them, your fatty liver is a delicacy. It'll fetch 10 times the price of foie gras. Still. The old man trembled, gripping an empty sake bottle. But the bottle was dry. That fact told the whole story. How much? 500,000 for you. If it's just the right lobe, the surgery is simple. You'll be in the hospital for a week, then you're back to drinking. 500,000. I wonder how much sake that buys. The old man's eyes drifted toward the horizon. In his mind, he was likely seeing an endless row of gallon bottles lining a liquor store shelf. Fine. I'll do it. The old man spoke and looked down. His back looked even smaller than when he'd sold his kidney. Number 5. The surgery took place in a dilapidated clinic on the outskirts of town. On the surface, it was a general practice, but in reality, it was a playground for underground doctors. The anesthesiologist and nurses were all professionals moved by money. Takashi waited in the waiting room with Yumi. She had brought a cooler box filled with a special preservation fluid. It wasn't just meant to chill the liver, it was prepared to age it at a specific temperature. 2 hours later, the doctor emerged. All done. The right lobe came out clean. The old man is waking up from the anesthesia. He'll survive on the left lobe, so no problem there. But tell him to cut back on the booze. His remaining liver is at its limit. Thanks. Takashi handed over the cash, and the doctor disappeared into the back. A nurse came out carrying the cooler box. Inside, submerged in saline, was a portion of a human liver. The old man's liver. It looked yellower than a normal liver, with visible beads of fat on the surface. Yumi peered inside, her eyes sparkling. Beautiful color. If we let this sit for 24 hours, the fat will permeate perfectly. Nice work, Takashi. Number 6. A week later, at the hidden counter in Roppongi, Yumi held a special dinner. There were 4 guests. They all wore masks and hats to hide their faces, but their clothes and aura gave them away. They were wealthy. One might have been a famous IT CEO. Another felt like a politician's secretary. The first course was an appetizer. According to Yumi's explanation, it was thinly sliced liver seasoned only with truffle oil and salt. Tonight's recommendation is a special, rare cut. Foie gras painstakingly cultivated over 50 years. Please, enjoy the rich flavor. The 4 guests tentatively lifted their forks to their mouths. Then, their eyes widened in unison. Incredible. I've never tasted anything like this. It's creamy, yet the aftertaste is so clean. I want another slice. Yumi smiled with satisfaction and began preparing the next dish. The main was a liver steak seared at high heat on the outside, kept rare on the inside. The sauce was a reduction of red wine and balsamic, mixed with a splash of the cheap sake the old man loved. It was Yumi's little touch of irony. Number 7. Meanwhile, Kenji sat in front of a computer at the police station, glaring at the monitor. Kenji, 30 years old. A detective in the Community Safety Division. He'd been abandoned by his parents as a child and raised in a foster home. Well, it was his father. His mother had died of illness when he was 5, and his father vanished shortly after. His father had been a violent drunk, but they were still blood. Kenji had never stopped looking for him. Lately, he'd been investigating illegal dark web transactions and stumbled upon an auction site called Rare Ingredient Flash Sale. The contents were human organs and body parts sold as food. It was nauseating, but it happened in the underworld. Kenji was monitoring the site when a particular listing caught his eye. Human foie gras, 50-year aged, rare. The seller ID was Yumi_kitchen. An image was attached, and it certainly looked like a human liver. Beside it was a comment from the seller. The liver of a devoted alcohol lover, painstakingly cultivated. The fat distribution is ideal, the perfect form of foie gras. Fresh right lobe harvested from a living donor, aged by a special method. Kenji enlarged the image. On the surface of the liver, he noticed a faint mark. He pulled out his own smartphone and opened a photo. It was a picture of his mother's heirloom ring. But that ring was supposed to have been hawked by his father years ago. 3 days ago, he'd found it listed on an online auction. The seller of the ring was also Yumi_Kitchen. No way. Kenji had a terrible feeling. Only his father should have had that ring. Did his father give it to this Yumi? Or? Kenji opened another database. Searching through organ trafficking arrests, a broker's name surfaced, Takashi, a man in his 40s. He had a record for drug trafficking and was flagged for suspected organ trade. Further digging linked Takashi to a members-only restaurant in Roppongi. The owner's chef's name, Yumi. A match for Yumi_Kitchen. Kenji stood up. Grabbing his coat, he called out to his colleague. I'm heading to Roppongi. I'll be in touch. Number 8. 5th floor of a building in Roppongi. Yumi's restaurant was operating quietly. The front door was locked, but at the back counter, 4 guests were enjoying their special dinner. Kenji entered through the back service door. He didn't have a warrant yet, but the situation was dire. He had to see for himself. Climbing the fire escape and peering through a window, he saw a man he recognized. Takashi. He looked exactly like his file photo. Takashi sat at the corner of the counter, watching Yumi cook. Yumi skillfully seared the meat and presented it to the guests. The guests ate and groaned in delight. The scene repeated. Kenji's phone vibrated. It was his colleague. Kenji, about that liver, we found the donor. A hit on the DNA database. Name, Yoshio Tanaka, 63. Address is. The address his colleague gave was the place Kenji had lived as a child. Kenji's hands shook. Do you have a photo? Yet. Sending it now. A few seconds later, the photo appeared on his screen. It was unmistakably his father. 10 years had passed, but that glare hadn't changed. A red, booze-flushed face with hollow eyes. Dad. Kenji looked at the counter through the window. A guest pierced a piece of meat with a fork and brought it to their mouth. Was that lump of meat a part of his father's liver? Before he knew it, Kenji had kicked through the window and leapt inside. Number 9. Don't move. Police. When Kenji drew his gun, the guests screamed and scrambled to their feet. A plate overturned, and a slice of meat fell to the floor. Yumi dropped her frying pan with a deafening clang. Takashi moved fast. He kicked a table toward Kenji, grabbed Yumi's hand, and bolted for the back exit. Wait! Kenji tried to give chase, but the guests surged toward the exit in a panic, blocking his way. He shoved them aside, shouting for them to get out of the way, but by the time he reached the back door, the two were gone. He heard footsteps clattering down the fire escape. Kenji started to follow, but stopped. Even if he chased them now, they'd be long gone. More importantly, he had to check on his father. Kenji called for an ambulance. Then, he started running toward the address his colleague had given him. Number 10. A dilapidated apartment on the outskirts. Kenji stood before the door of a corner room on the 2nd floor. There wasn't even a nameplate. But this was his father's room. He knocked, but there was no answer. The door was unlocked. Inside, the 6-mat room was a mountain of liquor bottles. Empty bottles were piled so high there was nowhere to step. His father lay on a futon in the back. Dad. He didn't move. Kenji leaned in, his father's eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell faintly. He was alive. Kenji sat down beside the futon, letting out a breath of relief. That's when he noticed a scrap of paper by the pillow. Scribbled words. You could tell they were written by a trembling hand. Sorry, I sold my liver to buy booze. But I have no regrets. Kenji read the note over and over. The handwriting was his father's. He remembered seeing his father's notes as a child. Back then, he was a terrifying man who drank and turned violent, but when he was sober, he was occasionally kind. The handwriting was the same as back then. No regrets, hey. Kenji gripped the note. Something threatened to spill from his eyes, but he bit his lip and held it back. He couldn't cry. He was still on the clock. His phone rang. His colleague. Kenji, no sign of Takashi or Yumi. We're watching the airports and ports, but they might have already slipped out of the country. Understood. I'm securing the father. Also, did we get the guest list from Yumi's restaurant? Yeah, we caught the 4 faces on security footage. All of them are high-status people. This is going to be big. Kenji hung up and looked at his father's face again. He was emaciated, his cheeks sunken, but his mouth seemed to hold a tiny, faint smile. Dad, was the steak good? There was no answer. Only the sound of faint, ragged breathing filled the room. Number 11. 3 months later. Takashi and Yumi still haven't been found. The probability that they fled abroad is high. The 4 guests were questioned, but they all stuck to the same line, I didn't know it was human meat. Prosecution would be difficult. The old man, Kenji's father, was kept under care in the hospital. His remaining left lobe was already at its limit, the doctor said he wouldn't last another 6 months. Even so, the old man kept demanding sake, much to the nurse's chagrin. Kenji was at the hospital again today. He lingered in front of his father's room, hesitating to go in. The words from that note wouldn't leave his head. I have no regrets. What did that mean? Was he without regret because he got to drink? Because the liver turned into cash? Or because he managed to avoid being a burden to his son? He didn't know. But Kenji opened the door. Inside, his father was looking out the window. He turned, looking surprised for a moment, then gave a bashful smile. Hey! You doing all right? With those few words, the resentment Kenji had carried for years felt as though it had slightly unraveled. Dad, I brought you some sake. Kenji pulled a gallon bottle from a convenience store bag. His father's eyes lit up. You sure? It's a secret from the nurses. Just a little, okay. With trembling hands, his father poured the sake into a cup. He took a sip and let out a long, deep breath. I'm glad I'm alive. Watching his profile, Kenji thought, right now, a piece of this old man's liver is being digested as foie gras in some rich bastard's stomach. Does eating that make them happy? Is this old man happy drinking his sake? Am I happy right now? There were no answers. Only the spring sunlight from the window stretching long across the hospital floor. Number end. The earth never lies, but the liver lied and sold for a high price. Yet, the man who sold it drank his fill with that money and is still alive. The ones who ate it seemed happy, too. In the end, perhaps nobody lost. Still, deep in Kenji's chest, the words from that note remained, pricking like a thorn. I have no regrets. Maybe those words were his father's final act of kindness. And dash.
All right, settle in for this one. We're about to unpack a story that kicks off in the desperate back alleys of Japan and ends, well, in a place you would never, ever expect. It's a dark, compelling tale about value, desperation, and a truly unsavory transaction. So, this whole thing really boils down to one pretty unsettling question. When something is considered medically useless, I mean, so damaged it can't possibly save a life, does its value just poof, drop to zero? Or does it somehow find a new kind of worth in a different, much darker market? And here's the twist, the part that'll make your skin crawl. The answer wasn't found in some sterile hospital room, no. For this man, it was found on a dinner plate. This is what takes a personal tragedy and turns it into something truly chilling. So, let's begin with our 2 key players. To really get how this all went down, You gotta understand the dynamic between the guy who saw an opportunity and the guy who had literally nothing left to lose. On one side, you've got this guy, Takashi. He's a street-smart broker, a real opportunist. He'd actually helped this same man sell a kidney years before. And when he finds him again, just totally destitute, you can almost see the gears turning in his head. Then, on the other side, you've got the seller. He's just an old alcoholic they call Oyaji-san. And he's so far gone, so desperate for his next bottle of sake, he's willing to do just about anything. And get this, Oyaji-san knows exactly how bad off he is. When Takashi brings up selling a piece of his liver, the old man basically says, "Who in their right mind would buy my liver? It's a fatty liver. The doctor told me if I keep drinking like this, I'll be dead in 5 years." I mean, wow, it's just this brutal, honest moment where he admits he thinks he's completely worthless. Okay, so let's move to the first major roadblock. Takashi thinks easy money, right? But there's a huge problem. The usual black market for organs, yeah, they want nothing to do with what Oyaji-san is selling. And we're not talking about a little bit of damage here. Medically, this thing was a complete disaster. His liver enzyme levels, they were 10 times the standard healthy value. One of the black market doctors just tells Takashi straight up, if you transplant this, the recipient will die. It's not just unusable, it's literally toxic. So Takashi, he keeps trying, he shops it around to his other contacts, but nope, the answer is always the same. Just look at these responses. Fatty liver not accepted, does not meet transplant criteria. My favorite is, grade 3 fatty liver? Is this a joke? So from any medical point of view, this liver is absolutely 100% worthless. The deal looks dead in the water. And this is where things take a serious turn. Faced with total failure, Takashi doesn't just give up. He asks a totally different question. A question that flips this whole story from medicine to something else. If it can't save a life, what can it be used for? This is Takashi's big pivot. He gets off the medical forums and dives way deeper into the dark web, into these weird niche corners. He's not looking for a patient anymore. He's looking for a different kind of customer, one with a much more disturbing appetite. Okay, so to get where this is headed, you need to know what foie gras is, right? It's this luxury food, a delicacy made from the liver of a duck or goose that's been force-fed to make it super fatty. And that's the key word here, fatty. And this is just bone-chilling. Takashi puts 2 and 2 together. What is Oyaji-san's liver, after all? It's the result of 50 years of self-inflicted force-feeding with alcohol. So he goes on the dark web and types in this horrifyingly simple search. Foie gras human. And believe it or not, he gets a hit. He finds a buyer, a high-end, exclusive chef named Yumi who runs a secret underground kitchen. And just look at this table. This shows the complete, insane shift in perspective. Every single thing that made the liver worthless to doctors is exactly what makes it priceless to Chef Yumi. The grade 3 fatty liver, to her, that's beautiful. Uniform marbling. The 50 years of alcoholism that destroyed it, she literally calls it a craftsman's work. A medical value of 0 suddenly transforms into a culinary value of over 1 million yen. It's unbelievable. So, the deal is made. I mean, Oyaji-san is horrified at first, but he agrees. The money is enough to buy him all the sake he could possibly dream of. And just like that, a piece of a living human being is sold as food. The whole procedure is just this cold, mechanical nightmare. Step 1, Oje-san gets his cash, 500,000 yen. Step 2, a shady black market doctor removes the right lobe of his liver. Step 3, Chef Yumi takes the organ not to a lab, but to her kitchen. She actually ages it for 24 hours to improve the flavor. And finally, step 4, it's served up as some ultra-rare specialty foie gras to her rich, unsuspecting clients. All right, let's get to the final act. This is where the whole thing starts to unravel. And it doesn't happen because of some random police tip. No. It's because of a deeply, deeply personal connection that no one could have seen coming. So it all starts with this detective, Kenji, who's monitoring the dark web for trafficking. On day 1, he flags an auction for human foie gras from a seller named Yumi_Kitchen. A couple days later, he sees that same seller is also auctioning off a very specific, unique ring. It's his own mother's ring, a ring he thought was gone forever after his alcoholic father abandoned him when he was just a kid. And suddenly, all the pieces just click into place with this terrifying speed. He connects the seller ID to Chef Yumi, which leads him to the broker, Takashi. And then comes the final blow. A DNA match on the organ itself reveals the donor is a man named Tanaka Yoshio. It's his father. So Kenji just loses it. He raids the restaurant, but Takashi and Yumi manage to slip away. The trail eventually leads Kenji to this squalid little apartment, just filled with empty bottles. And there, lying on a futon, is his father. He's alive, but just barely, having sold a part of himself for booze. And right there, by his father's side, Kenji finds a note. It's part confession, part final statement. It just says, "I'm sorry, I sold my liver and bought sake, but I have no regrets." That's it. It's this hauntingly simple message that gives you absolutely no easy answers, no clean resolution. And that's what we're left with, really. This one question. What does it even mean to have no regrets at the end of a life like that? Was it really just about the money for the sake he wanted so badly? Or was it something else, something deeper? Maybe in his own messed up way, he felt like he was finally paying his own way, not being a burden. The story doesn't tell us. It just leaves us to sit with that thought and to wonder about the true price of things at the very end of a life.
Okay, so imagine this for a second. Imagine a world where your worst vices, the things that are, actively destroying your body, suddenly make you valuable.
And not valuable in a medical study kind of way.
No, not at all. I mean, valuable to a chef. Today, we are taking a seriously disturbing yet absolutely fascinating look into a culinary underground that I promise you probably didn't know existed.
This is something else.
We're talking about a shift away from traditional organ trafficking to something that, well, it sounds like pure horror fiction. We are talking about human foie gras.
It is a confronting concept, isn't it?
Huh?
But what makes today's deep dive so compelling is that it's not just about the shock value. We're looking at a narrative account called The Dark Liquor of Fatty Liver.
Or Shibuken no Yamizake in the original Japanese.
Exactly. And while the whole idea is grotesque, the mechanics behind it, the supply and demand, the exploitation, the detachment of the wealthy, it's all terrifyingly realistic.
It really is. So our mission today is to unpack this whole story. We're going to see how a medical condition that makes an organ totally worthless for transplant becomes a high-priced commodity.
Right. And we follow four main archetypes to see how it happens. Takashi, the broker who's down on his luck.
Oyaji, the destitute donor, the father.
Yumi, a ruthless, high-end chef.
And Kenji, the detective, trying to untangle this whole mess.
And I think it's important to say up front, this isn't a simple good guys versus bad guys story. It's a story about desperation, on every single level. Financial, chemical, and even the desperation of the super rich who are just bored.
So let's set the scene. It kicks off in this gritty back alley, lit up by just the hum of a white vending machine light. This is where we first meet Takashi.
And Takashi's not having a good year.
No.
No, he's what you'd call a dying breed of criminal. He's an organ broker, but the whole market has changed. The police are cracking down, sure, but the bigger issue is that the internet has made donors savvier.
Severe, right. They don't need a middleman like Takashi skimming off the top anymore. They can find buyers themselves.
The whole dark trade is different. So the days of, tricking someone into selling a kidney for sheep are pretty much over.
Right, so he's broke, and in that vending machine light, he spots this guy, Oyaji.
Which is just a term for old man or pops.
Yeah, and this guy looks rough. I mean, 60s, but looks 70, homeless, digging for loose change. And we learn a crucial detail. Takashi knows him.
He does, because 5 years ago, this same man sold a kidney through Takashi.
Which is just wild to think about. He's already sold a piece of himself.
And he blew every single yen on booze and women. Now he's back at square one, sitting on an empty sake box, literally shaking because he needs a drink.
So Takashi, ever the opportunist, sees this broken man and thinks, okay, well, one more score. He goes up to Oyaji and proposes selling his liver.
And the liver's unique, right? It can regenerate. That's the pitch.
Exactly. He gives him the whole sales pitch that they can do a partial resection, just take the right lobe, and the left lobe will keep him alive. Oyaji, desperate for cash for more alcohol, he agrees.
But this is where the plan just hits a brick wall. This is what we're calling part one, the failed transaction.
They go to this underground doctor thinking it's going to be a quick payday, and the doctor, he pretty much just laughs at them.
It's a hard no.
Yeah.
A medical no. And the details here are so important for what comes next. The doctor runs the tests and finds Oyaji's liver is, well, it's a complete disaster zone. Grade 3 alcohol-induced fatty liver.
Grade 3, I mean, that sounds bad. What does that actually mean?
It means it's the worst it can be. His enzyme levels, the AST and ALT, are 10 times what they should be. The left lobe, the part that's supposed to keep him alive after the surgery, it's more than half fat.
So it's useless for a transplant.
Completely. The doctor says if you put this in someone, they'd reject it immediately. They could die. It's medically worthless.
So Oyaji is, in the organ trafficking world, a lemon, a total write-off. Takashi has to break the news to him, and Oyaji's reaction is just, it's pathetic. He doesn't care about his health. He's just mad he can't buy booze.
And that's the moment. That's the pivot. You have this product, the liver, with zero value in the health market because of the fat. But Takashi, watching this desperate man, he has this stroke of dark genius. He realizes that in a different context, fatty liver isn't a defect.
It's a delicacy.
It's a delicacy.
And this brings us to part 2, the dark innovation. So Takashi gets on the dark web, but he stops looking at medical forums. He starts searching for things like exotic meat.
And human foie gras.
Yeah. It's such a disturbing mental shift. He stops seeing Oyaji as a person, a donor, and starts seeing him as
livestock. And on these forums, he finds Yumi.
Let's talk about Yumi. She runs a very fancy French restaurant in Roppongi, a wealthy Tokyo district. She has her public restaurant, and then she has the secret back room.
Yumi is such a contrast to that grimy alley. She's sophisticated, she puts on glasses to read the medical report Takashi sends her, but she's not reading it like a doctor.
She's reading it like a chef.
Exactly. She sees the data on Oyaji's liver, and she doesn't see organ failure. She sees marbling.
Ugh, that is so grim. But she makes this argument that because he's been drinking heavily for 50 years straight, the fat is perfectly uniformly distributed.
Yeah, she compares it to gavage, the process of force-feeding a goose to make foie gras. She says Oyaji has essentially been doing that to himself with alcohol since he was a teenager.
She calls him a craftsman.
A craftsman, yeah, who has spent a half-century perfecting this ingredient. She says the texture will be identical to the highest quality goose liver, but with that added taboo allure.
So they make a deal, and the economics of it are just brutal.
They are. They'll take the right lobe. Yumi figures she can get 20 slices from it.
And sell them for 50,000 yen each. That's what, 350, 400 bucks a slice? A million yen total?
And the split is what really gets you. Oyaji, the guy literally being carved up, he gets 500,000 yen. Takashi, the middleman, gets 300,000. And Yumi gets 200,000, plus the bragging rights.
It just shows you where the value is. The person taking all the physical risk gets the smallest relative cut. So now they have to go back and convince Oyaji. When Takashi tells him, hey, good news, but they're going to eat it, he flips out.
As you would. He's yelling, I'm not being eaten, I'm not food.
But his outrage just crumbles the second the money comes up. Takashi just says, think of all the steak you can buy with 500,000 yen.
And the horror of it all just gets washed away by the promise of intoxication. It's a really chilling look at the power of addiction. He just gives in.
Which moves us to part 3, the procedure and the feast. They go to a shady suburban clinic. The surgery happens. The doctor even warns them, I took the right lobe, but the left one is shot. If he keeps drinking, he's dead.
A warning everyone in the room knows is going to be completely ignored. And the focus immediately shifts to the product.
Right. When the liver comes out, it's described as yellowish with visible fat granules. And Yumi is apparently ecstatic.
She puts it in a cooler to age for 24 hours to let the fat circulate. Again, it's the professionalism. She treats it with the reverence she would a prize-winning cut of beef. That's what makes it so deeply unsettling.
Okay, so fast forward a week. We're in the secret room in Roppongi. 4 VIPs, all masked. The story hints they're like an IT CEO, a politician's secretary.
People with money and power.
And boredom. They're looking for an experience money can't normally buy.
Right. They want to cross a line the rest of us can't. It's not about being hungry.
And the menu is just, wow, first course, sashimi style, thinly sliced with truffle oil and salt.
And the main course, a liver steak. And get this, the sauce is made with red wine, balsamic, and cheapsake.
A little nod to the donor.
It's Yumi's sick inside joke. But what strikes me is the diner's reaction. They describe it as creamy, with a clean aftertaste. They are completely disconnected from the source.
Not a thought for the homeless man this came from. It's just a rare delicacy. It shows how easily people can compartmentalize horror when it's served on fine china.
It's the ultimate inequality. The luxury of that room versus the squalor of the man who provided the meal.
So while this is happening, there's another thread we need to pull on, part 4. The detective's thread. Let's bring in Kenji.
Kenji's a detective, and he's driven by this personal ghost. He's an orphan. His mother died when he was 5, and his alcoholic father just abandoned him. He's been searching for his dad for years.
Not really to reconnect, but just for closure. He wants to know why.
Exactly. And part of his job is monitoring the dark web, these exotic meat auctions. And he spots a listing from a user, Yuma Kitchen.
The item for sale is human foie gras, 50-year aged.
And here is the smoking gun in the photo of the liver itself.
Which is horrifying enough.
Right. In the photo, there's a ring, his mother's ring.
Wait, how is the ring in the picture?
It seems like it was just carelessness. Maybe it was part of the deal, part of what his father had on him. But Kenji recognizes it instantly. His father pawned that ring years ago.
So he connects the dots. The user selling the liver also has his mother's ring. The donor isn't some random person.
It's his missing father, Yoshio Tanaka.
That is a gut punch of a realization. He links Yumi to the restaurant, Takashi to old broker files, and realizes the dinner is happening right now.
So he races to Roppongi. This brings us to part 5, the raid.
Kenji bursts into the restaurant. It's total chaos. He sees Takashi, the broker, sitting there watching the VIPs eat. Kenji draws his weapon.
And Takashi's quick. He flips a table, causes a diversion, grabs Yumi, and they bolt through the back. The wealthy diners are just panicking, screaming, blocking Kenji's way because they don't want to be identified.
And Kenji has a choice to make, right? Chase the criminals or check on the victim.
And he gets a call from a colleague. The DNA is a match. The donor is definitely his father, and they have an address for him.
He chooses his father. He lets Takashi and Yumi go. He rushes to this rundown apartment.
And the scene is just what you'd expect. Mountains of empty sake bottles everywhere. And his dad is there, asleep on a futon.
But then he finds a note, a handwritten note. And Kenji recognizes the handwriting from those few good memories from his childhood.
And the note says, "Sorry, I sold my liver and bought booze, but I have no regrets."
Wow, no regrets. That is heavy.
It is. It just reframes the entire story. To us, it's a tragedy of exploitation. But to his father, it was a transaction that got him exactly what he wanted. He didn't want a long life. He wanted to drink himself to death in peace.
So let's talk about the resolution. It's 3 months later. What happened to Takashi and Yumi?
Gone. Escaped abroad, living off the profit.
Damn the diners.
0 consequences. Their defense was simply, we didn't know it was human, and because of their status, it worked. The system is built to protect wealthy consumers.
Meanwhile, Ryaji Yoshio is in the hospital. His remaining liver is failing. He has less than 6 months left.
And Kenji is visiting him. And despite everything, Kenji does something surprising.
He smuggles in a small cup of sake.
Yeah.
Why would he do that? A cop? His son? Why?
I think it's an act of acceptance. Yeah. He finally realizes he can't save his father from who he is. His father drinks it and says, "I'm glad I'm alive."
That's the paradox, isn't it? The thing that's killing him is the only thing that makes him feel alive.
And Kenji gives him that one last moment. He acknowledges that his father's definition of life is just different from his.
The story ends with that really ambiguous feeling. The narrator says the soil doesn't lie, but the liver lied to become high-value foie gras.
That's such a profound line. The liver's disease state lied by masquerading as a premium quality. And really, everyone in the story was living a lie. The diners, Takashi, Yumi.
Maybe Oyaji was the only one who was honest. He knew exactly what he was and what he wanted.
It's a thought. He sold off parts of himself to sustain that identity.
So when we step back and look at the whole picture, it's really disturbing. The broker made his money, the chef got her moment of glory, the diners had their ultimate meal, and the father got to drink himself to death with his favorite booze. In a twisted way, was this a win-win?
And that is the question the story just forces on you. From a pure market perspective, yeah, everyone got what they wanted. But ethically, it's a complete catastrophe. It's a total breakdown of human dignity.
The fact that his value came directly from his sickness is what I can't shake. His health failure was his financial success.
Precisely. It turns the whole logic of well-being on its head. Value is found in decay, in disease, in self-destruction.
And Kenji's just left holding the bag.
He is. He has to live with all of it. His father probably felt like he did a good thing, you know? I didn't burden my son. I paid my own way with my own flesh. A bizarre kind of parental duty. Kenji has to carry the weight of that.
It's a lot to process. There's no clean resolution. The bad guys get away, and the victim didn't even want to be saved.
It mirrors reality, though. These underground economies exist because there's demand, and there's a supply born from desperation. You can't arrest supply and demand.
So I guess the thought we want to leave you with today is this. In a world where everything seems to have a price, the father dies saying he has no regrets, But is no regrets really the only metric that matters? Or is there a point where a transaction is so fundamentally wrong that even the victim's satisfaction can't make it right?
It's the difference between autonomy and dignity. And sometimes maybe you just can't have both.
That is definitely going to keep me up tonight. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious. And maybe skip the foie gras for a little while.